We added again, and we're going to talk about something here, a little bit about the NVIDIA open sourcing their drivers. I have read briefly up about it, and it's not what this video is going to be much about. I think it's great. It's amazing that they're doing it. You have to remember, if you actually read the release announcement, they are focusing on the enterprise. It's their server Tesla cards, I think they're called, and their server card, their production cards that are getting production-ready drivers at the moment. The desktop cards, the GeForce cards, is still in pre-production alpha state. What that should tell you is that why they are open sourcing it, it means that there must be a demand for it in the corporate world. So it's not the desktop users that have made them open source NVIDIA, but it's the servers, it's the organizations, it's the big companies that have done it. So if we should thank someone for NVIDIA open sourcing their drivers, it's not him, it's not Chris Titus Tech, it's not me, it's not you. It's those big massive corporations that everyone hates. It's the Dell server section, it's the HP server section, it's the Fortune 500 companies we should thank for it. It's the development farms out there, it's the AI farms out there, companies out there, it's the machine learning companies out there, it's the technical AutoCAD technical people out there, it's the graphical people out there we should thank. Big corporate rendering studios that render, let's say, videos from Hollywood, that they're probably one of those that have championed that they want NVIDIA to open source their professional line of graphic cards because they want to use Linux to render videos. It's because big, massive companies with a lot of fucking money have made a request for NVIDIA. It's not little DistroTube with his nerd boner in his barn or out in his garden that wants to run free and open source software that is the reason for this. The people that have demanded NVIDIA to open source their code probably don't give a fuck about the Free Software Foundation. They probably don't even give a fuck about open source. They just want to use Linux because Linux is a better tool for the job. And open source is then a byproduct of that. And then, we can actually make this work better if we could see the source code for our hardware drive. So therefore, they want NVIDIA to open source their code. I would almost guarantee it has nothing to do with political views. It has nothing to do with ethical views. It has nothing to do with championing the Free Software Foundation, flag or anything like that. It's just because they see Linux as being better than Windows or any other system for these work tasks. Just want to put that out there, a little bit of a long intro. I have my little yellow cup. It's kind of becoming a little bit of a mascot, I think. So I will pour something to drink. I recommend you guys do it, and then we will look into... So let's see what kind of idiocy this guy can get into right now.
Linux, we just keep winning, right? We just can't stop winning, because today marks a monumental achievement that many of us thought would never come.
Again, previous statement, I'm going to stop a lot. Nice garden, by the way. Like I said in the intro to the video, if you look at the snippets that people are talking about and what is open sourced, it's the production graphic cards that is in working condition or in production ready condition. The way that their announcement has been done is that, again, like I said in the beginning, it's because there have been a demand in the big, massive corporate world and not because him or me. He's saying Linux just keep winning. Having NVIDIA drivers open sourcing is not really a win. Is it going to get more people to run Linux? Probably not. Honestly, I don't think so. I will guess Photoshop opening sourcing everything would get more people to use Linux than the NVIDIA card drivers. Because here's the thing. The NVIDIA proprietary drivers is actually really fucking great under Linux. They actually work really, really well as they are. So if we can't get more people to run Linux with the proprietary version of the cards, do you think we will get that with the open source card? So he's a little bit nerd happy.
Today is the day that it was announced that NVIDIA plans to open source their GPU drivers, their drivers are eventually going to be...
Let's see what they are saying here. NVIDIA transitioning to open source Linux GPU kernel drivers. There's finally coming. I don't know even where this is from, what site this is from. There's finally NVIDIA is publishing their Linux GPU kernel module as open source. So much excitement and a sign of the time the embargo has just expired, and this super exciting milestone that many of us have been hoping to see for many years. Over the past 2 decades, NVIDIA has offered great Linux driver support with the proprietary driver stack. Yep. But with the success of AMD's open source driver effort going on for more than a decade, many have been called for NVIDIA to open that driver. This user space software is their user space software is remaining closed source, but as of today, they have formally opened up their Linux GPU kernel module and will be maintaining it moving forward. So here's the scope of the landmark. So basically, it's not everything about. Oh, you can't see most of it from my fucking webcam, so I read it up for you. It's really not that big of a deal when you look into it, and when you're talking about when you're taking into account what I just said. So it could just mean that we just get basic hardware support with NVIDIA, and then if you want to have all the bells and bells and whistles, you have to use the proprietary drivers. What this is telling me is that they are doing the bare minimum to satisfy, the open source world. And let's be honest, AMD supporting Linux have not done, at least on the desktop market, AMD supporting Linux have not brought more AMD Windows users over to Linux. AMD supporting Linux have not made more gamers use Linux. So this is exact the same thing. Again, like I said before, this is not going to be a win for Linux on a user space, meaning we are not going to see an explosion in Linux users. We are not going to see gamers and gaming companies now wanting to support Linux because of this, because then AMD titles would have done the same for the last decade, and they have not. Again, this seems like this has been recommended by the corporate world. The sections I was talking about before, the server market, the AI market, the machine learning market, the render market, the creative market, in the corporate world, may have demanded that, we can make this one better on our Linux user machines or our Linux server farms if you open source the code, the core components, and that also means that we will be buying more cards from you. So is it a win? Yeah, it's a win, but it's a win for the corporate world. It's not a win for us. And again, AMD have done this for a decade, and it has not moved more people over to Linux and open source or free software. It's nice they're doing it. I couldn't agree more. Of course it's nice they're doing it. I think it's great, it's amazing, and yeah, they should have done it a long time ago. But they are still controlling most of the software, or a lot of the most important things about the software. Their userland technologies, for example.
Open source, they're going to become part of the Linux kernel. They're going to become kernel modules, and it's a day of celebration, especially for those of us that for years, and I'm certainly one of those people, for years I have been calling upon NVIDIA to finally open source their GPU drivers, because Intel opened their GPU drivers, right? AMD open source their GPU drivers.
I don't want to dive into his fucking channel and see how many times he has asked NVIDIA to open source it. I call a little bit of bullshit here. I will say one thing is that he's one of those people that think everything should be open source. So if you put it under that umbrella that everything should be open source, he's kind of right, but I don't think that he has been that highly vocal about NVIDIA open sourcing their drive. He may have talked about it here and there, but he talks about that with any proprietary software. If he sees a proprietary software, his go-to is it has to be open source. That's the end of the conversation. He's kind of like the same as the gamers under Linux, that Elden Ring is running better on Linux, therefore every game is running better under Linux. This is what he's doing here. He's like, NVIDIA finally open sourced a part of their drivers, okay? A part, not all of it. Part of their drivers. So therefore, let's take it as a win and do this to everyone to say, oh, open source is stupid and stuff like that. And like I said before, why are they doing it? It's not for us.
And there's a reason why, especially on Linux, AMD and Intel kind of dominate the market.
Again, citation, I want to see numbers that back that up. Because I have a sneaky suspicion that NVIDIA is the most used graphic cards, at least for gamers, under Linux. So when you're throwing stuff like that out, they have some form of citation that we can back up your claims. Again, I need to be better at that myself, but at least like back it up.
On Linux is because NVIDIA has always been a complete pain in the rear end to use on Linux, right? It's just frustrating to use NVIDIA.
No, it has not. I have never had problem with NVIDIA under I have never had more problems with NVIDIA under Linux than I had with AMD. I had an AMD card. I have actually had a couple of AMD cards. Right now, with the proprietary driver, we are kind of just compiling the proprietary driver against the kernel, basically infusing, roughly speaking, or plugging in, if you think Legos, the proprietary bits into the kernel, therefore making the kernel not so kosher anymore. It works. Has there been, we question in driver performance and saying that, yeah, but there's also been that with AMD. The biggest benefit that AMD and Intel have over NVIDIA is that because they have open sourced it, the community can help them out. That's why you don't see, you have one AMD driver, you have one Intel driver. With NVIDIA, you have the open source drivers, or the community drivers, and the official drivers. So you're kind of parallel programming, or you're trying to do the same thing in two different ways. So that's, hopefully, now we will only have one NVIDIA driver. That's where it can benefit. Honestly, if you're running the proprietary versions of NVIDIA, they have always worked, in some instances, better than the AMD drivers. And I've been using NVIDIA under Linux since 2010 or something like that.
Even though NVIDIA GPUs, objectively, they're better. The best video cards on the market are made by NVIDIA. And the best video drivers, as far as the most powerful video drivers, are the proprietary NVIDIA video drivers. But getting those things to work properly on Linux has always been an issue.
No, you don't. Sudo apt-get install NVIDIA driver. Really difficult. Really fucking difficult. And if you're really nerdy, you go on to NVIDIA's website, you select the version of card you have, you select your operating system, and it downloads a bin file. Then you do // the name of the file, .bin, and it runs the installer for you and install the NVIDIA drivers. Installing NVIDIA under Linux has been almost effortless the last at least 10 years, especially if you're running an Ubuntu-based distribution. You just go into their hardware, can't fucking remember what it's called now, the hardware, installing the optional drivers or something like that, and you just check NVIDIA and you check install, and Bob's your uncle, you have NVIDIA installed. You don't have to be a fucking coder or hacker to do it. So he's overplaying it. He's making it out to be more on this, and he's talking out of his ass.
And today, it's a new day, right? I don't know when this stuff will eventually be properly open sourced and be available for us as far as Linux users, but I think this is a sign that more people within the community need to join the team. And the team I'm talking about, those of us that preach the message of free and open source.
Why do people like him see that everyone someone open source a program that now more people should join the team? No, they did it because there was a need for it. They did it because there was a demand that makes sense. The day that don't make sense anymore, if that day comes, we don't know. But if there comes a day where that don't make sense anymore, they will stop doing it. Like I said, they are not doing this because oh my god, we are now going to coddle Richard Stallman and free and open source is the only way of living life in the hardware world and software world. No, they did it because there was a demand, it made sense, and they can make money off it. Or they can save a lot of money. That's why they did it. Is this something we can earn a shit ton of money on? Yeah, chief, we can. Let's open source that motherfucker. Is this something that can make us spend less money on maintaining Linux? Yes, chief. Well, let's open source it. That's how they think. Okay? But he's talking here again, diarrhea out of his ass. It's the blindness of the Richard Stallman followers. It's a good cult follower. He's a good cult member.
Software. You know, there's so many people in the Linux community that talk about how it's okay to use proprietary software.
And it is.
One of those people. I have never, ever shamed anybody for.
Should we start to... should we go through his archive one day and show how wrong this is? He may not say it, but he indicated.
Using proprietary software, even though I get ridiculed all the time in like comments on social media. I have never made fun of anybody for using proprietary software, with the exception of the people at the Linux Foundation. Those guys
So he has then.
Shouldn't use proprietary software, but I don't care if people use proprietary software. But here's the thing. I want more people, more developers to license their software as free software, right? We need to get more people that normally would have licensed their software and their applications, their programs, their libraries as proprietary. I want those people to start using free and open source licenses.
Why? And I hope he goes into this, because here's the thing. This is my firm belief. If you, my friend, go to your garden and you build a shed, you are free to use whatever tool you want, whatever schematics you want, do it in whatever fucking way you want to do it. I should not determine how you do your job. The same. It's up to the fucking developers. He should not demand or would like them to do that. Oh, I wish more developers would do that. No. Let them do whatever they want. He's not a developer. He is not in that project. He's not in the NVIDIA project. He's not contributing to NVIDIA. He's not doing anything with NVIDIA. So I'm of this belief. If you are a developer, hobbyist, or whatever the fuck it is, if you write one line of code, nobody should tell you what you should do with that line of code. Whatever you do with that line of code, it's totally your command. You're the boss over that fucking shit. You are the fucking chief, okay? You made it. You may choose to do some things with it that makes people not want to run it. You may choose to do some things with it that makes it incompatible with a lot of other systems or licenses, stuff like that. But you are in your right to do so because you made it. You did it, my friend. It's yours. It's not him's. It's not me. It's not anyone's. If you then choose to be part of the free and open source community, great. We are happy to have you. But we should never influence you to do so. And here's another thing. We should never say we don't want to work with you if you're not doing it, which I think is one of the biggest problems I have with the Free Software Foundation. They need to be more acceptable for other licenses. Plain old simple. We should not tell people what to do with their code, and we should be playing well with them. We should be able to work with them as if they were part of our community. Because people that work together go to great places together. People that fight each other, not so much. He's a little bit on from what I watched of his videos through the years. Yeah, this is definitely not what he thinks. He may seem a little bit rational right now, but if you watch his videos, and he said himself he's been ridiculed for looking down on people using proprietary software. Why do you think that is? If there's fire, if there's smoke, there's probably also fire. Okay? And if it's like, oh, it's sarcasm. If people don't know that you're being sarcastic, it's not sarcasm, it's not working. It's saying like, oh, I'm the funniest guy in the world, but nobody's laughing at my jokes. Then you're not funny, my friend. So yeah, a little bit snaky here.
And many of us in the community, you know, more and more of us, it's a growing voice, but it's still not there yet. And, you know, here in the last few years, we've seen real major changes. We've seen, you know, companies come around that normally would never have open sourced anything. Microsoft even is open sourcing some of their software. And of course, NVIDIA is like one of the holdouts. Like, there's no way NVIDIA is ever going to open.
What did I just said? They do it because it makes sense, either financially, they can earn money or save money, or they do it because of goodwill. They don't do it because they are, oh my god, now we're going to become, like I said, Richard Stallman's altar boy. And in the most fucking worst possible way that you can think of. They do it because it makes sense. And here's another thing. Most companies don't open source their source code because they really are buying into the political view and the philosophical view. They do it because it makes sense for them. They can earn money or save money on it, or they can potentially get a lot of help from the community and therefore, save development time and so on and so on. Or they just do it because it seems like a good idea. It seems like a nice idea to do it. But most people don't do it because of the political aspect of it, which he thinks it is. He sees it as a political vessel, and Linux or free and open source software is a political party. That's how he looks at it. When people are open sourcing their software, they are now becoming part of that political party. No. They are doing it because there is a demand for it. They're doing it because they see a benefit for it. They are doing it because it makes sense for them, either financially or otherwise. And I sounded like a broken record right now, but I really, really, really want to put this into your guys' brains, because one thing you can be 100% certain of is that NVIDIA is not your friend, Microsoft is not your friend, Canonical is not your friend, Red Hat is not your friend. No company is your friend. They look at you in one fucking way. You are their customer/user. So they do everything to keep you and get more of you, and also earn more money from you. And if that means open sourcing some programs to do some goodwill, or get the community to help them so they save development time and money on development, or they could actually sell more product into a market, there's a high demand for their product if they open source it, they will do it. He's not talking about that. He sees it as NVIDIA have now agreed to be part of this political party that he's part of, the Richard Stallman Free Software Foundation party.
Open source anything, and now it's announced today that NVIDIA is going to open source their GPU drivers. The other big holdout, Adobe, has never been friendly to free and open source software, but I think we're going to get there.
Let me put it this way. If you read forum posts from software companies where people ask about them supporting Linux or converting to open source, and I'm one of them, if I find a program under Windows that I really, really, really like, Affinity Design is one of them, a Photoshop alternative, I go and see if there's talks, about them supporting Linux or open sourcing their shit. And when you do that, you go into their forums and stuff like that, the thing you hear the most is, it makes no sense, it will be too much work for us to open source our thing, because it's not just like changing the license. They may have licensed other software components that they are using in their software. So when they are open sourcing it, those components have to be open source also. So now they have to ask their licensed software developers if they want to open source, and then they have to ask there, and so on and so on and so on, because you can't just open source, this bit and this bit, because the GPL go in and become really, really fucking iffy about that. So it's either all of it to some extent, again, I'm oversaturating here, or none of it. So it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of extra development time, it takes a lot of extra upkeep to have open source. Vivaldi have talked a lot about that in their blog posts and forums. And then also, it don't make financial sense. That's the other one that you hear. That if we have to convert our product to Linux, not only will it cost us a shit ton of money to make sure that it's as stable and have the same functionalities as under Windows, even if it's proprietary, but we also need to have a support up, because we can't just say, oh, well, we don't provide support for Linux. They now have to have a trained staff they need to pay for that can support Linux versions. They don't make enough money that they can say, oh, we are willing to have a $100, $200, $500,000 deficit in our accountings or spreadsheet. I was about to say, what the fuck is it called? Our economical account. You get what I'm saying here. Each year, we cannot afford that Linux is costing us hundreds of thousands each year, because it will. So it has to be more profitable under Linux. That's why they're doing it. They don't care about the license that much. They don't care about the philosophies. They don't care about the political thing. They care about this. Does it make sense for them? Does it cost them extra money? And if it does, can Linux recuperate that?
Here with Adobe too. But what we need is more people preaching this message. We need more people to stop with the proprietary software is okay.
It is, again, he's just talked about. He don't look down on people using proprietary software. What he's doing right now is looking down on proprietary software by saying it's not okay. That's looking down on proprietary software. That is having a biased and a negative feeling towards proprietary software. And we should not tell any fucking developers what they do with their fucking work. As a fucking idiot running around in his garden and getting sunburned. Shut the fuck up. You can have your preferences, like I have. But it's not... I can't go demand what other people should do with their fucking work and their creations. You don't go up to fucking Van Gogh and tell him how to paint. You let him do whatever the fuck he wants. So yes, this is him looking down on proprietary software. Maybe that's why people say that you're a little bit snaky.
So you use proprietary software. If you make proprietary software, you're cool. You're just like everybody else. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Proprietary software is just as good as free and open source software.
It is. It is. There's nothing wrong with proprietary software. It's all about what people do with it.
No, that's not the message. I mean, that's okay, like, from a moral point of view. You know, I don't judge anybody that uses...
He just did. I'm sorry, but he may not judge... He may not outright say that I'm judging you, but he's judging proprietary software. And if he's judging the software, he's also judging the people using it. Kind of goes hand in hand.
Proprietary software, and I don't really judge anybody that makes proprietary software.
He just did.
Where, you know, I'm not going to pronounce any kind of moral judgment on they're a bad person.
Well, if you think the software is bad, which is made by the people, the software can't fucking change its license by itself. So you're indirectly saying that they are making a bad product. That is looking down and criticizing and having moral judgment over those people, at least as how I see it. If you judge me from drinking, or if you're judging this cup, saying it's a bad cup, it's anti-consumer, it's ugly, it's fucking crazy, and it should not be existing and stuff like that, you're kind of indirectly making me into being a bad person for supporting it. Or buying it.
But objectively, I do think free and open source software is better software than proprietary software. It has real, tangible advantages.
What are those? Citation. Give us some reasons.
Over proprietary software, it just does. And
that's not an argument. I am just stronger than you. I just am. Let's go and bench press. Let's go and deadlift. No. I just am. Okay? Fuck you.
I think the world would be a better place with more free and open source software.
Tell me, all-knowing Derek, tell me, how is open source going to make society a better place? How is open source going to make the world a better place? Tell me. How is open source having a working plan against homeless problems in the United States and in the world? How is open source going to help the poor people? How is open source going to help more equality within education? How is open source going to help veterans, warriors, soldiers? How is open source going to help the housing market? How is open source going to help war and conflict? How is open source going to help starving fucking kids and families in Africa and other places in the world? How is open source going to help inequality between genders in certain parts in the world? Where is the plan that open source can deal with that? Do you have like is there like a made out point to point plan? Is there a PowerPoint presentation is what I'm asking you? Or will open source just make it better for fucking computer nerds? Will open source make the world better for developers? Will open source make the world better for computer nerds like free shit? I think that's what he's talking about. Because if everything became open source, the world would be the exact same thing as it is today. Exact the same thing, world. Nothing would change. The only people that would be infected is you, me, and developers. Anyone in the IT industry will be infected by it. But we all know system administrators are not going out and making sure that, kids are not being mutilated in some parts of the world. System administrators is not building fucking water hoses and, bringing food to people that are starving in some part of the world. So how is the world going to be better if everything was open source? I want to see that PowerPoint presentation. Show me the PowerPoint presentation. Please. I hate it when they talk like that. I want to punch a fucking bag right now.
And I think more people need to join us. More people need to jump on the train with us because, again,
This is like a political party for him. Why do people need to join you? Why? Why can't you let people make up their own mind? Why is it so fucking bad that they don't want to join you? That's freedom. Freedom means that I have the freedom to not agree with you.
Winning. Just read the news, right? We're winning every day. More and more companies are subscribing to the ideology that is free and open source.
What about how many more companies is making proprietary software? How about how many more and more new companies are making proprietary software? I will not be out of a limb here to say that for every company that open source something, there are probably 10 or 100 folds of companies doing the opposite, okay?
Or software. And if you've been one of these people that kind of made fun of the free software zealots, because I know a lot of you guys out there make fun of people like me and others. And
yeah. Your views on free software versus proprietary software are sickening. Yeah. Here's the thing. People don't make fun of free software. People don't make fun about open source software. People don't make fun about Linux. They make fun of people that are out of reality with it. You. Open source is not a political party. Free software is not a political party. Linux is not a political party. Stop using it as a political party. That's what those people hate. They hate people that is like, you're using Linux. What are your stance on systemd? What is your stance on snap packages? What are your stance on free software? Do you like Richard Stallman or not? Do you like Linus Torvalds? What is your political view on this subject? What's your political view on that subject? Those people they hate. Because it has nothing to do with the fucking reason why they're running Linux or using open source software, free software. It has nothing to do with coding. It has nothing to do with an operating system. It's something that, in a really, I'm going to be as nice as I can be, it's a really unintelligent way to force political change into the world. If this is what if he thinks Linux is a political vessel, if he thinks that free software is political, he should have become a politician, not a fucking tech guy. You can't change conquest from a fucking Linux operating system by open sourcing NVIDIA driver. So why should you want people to jump on it? Why can't you just let people do whatever the fuck they want? That's freedom. You let people do whatever the fuck they want, as long as they're not doing anything illegal or hurting anyone. But let them do whatever the fuck they want. But his version of freedom is either you're with us and call that freedom, or you're against us and call that not freedom. That's what people hate. They hate being looked different at. They hate being told that proprietary software is fucking bad and you should not use it and blah, 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 blah. Because when you're doing that, you're attacking their choices. And you're attacking choices they probably have no fucking idea of that they have made. You're attacking their choices that they have no input in. Oh, why do you want to work for a company that uses proprietary software and blah, 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 blah. Like him and Luke Smith should fucking have kids together, man.
I'm not one of these people that take things personally. I don't care. But at some point, you need to realize that there is a battle going on. And
no, there's not a battle going on. Here's the thing. Windows is not at war with Linux. macOS is not at war with Linux. They don't have to. They are already comfortable in their sections of the market and making a shit ton of money and have been massively fucking stable for the last 3 decades, if not more, with their market share. Linux is at war. The Free Software Foundation is at war. They are fighting a war that only they are part of. How stupid does that sound to you? Because there's no war going on. There is different of opinions going on. There is different of opinions of philosophies about development going on. But even Steve Ballmer, when he, or was it Bill Gates, I couldn't remember his name for some fucking reason, said that Linux was a cancer. That was not because they were at war with it. They just didn't like what Linux stood for. They didn't like the philosophy behind it. But they didn't really went out to combat Linux. They didn't really went out to undermine Linux in all shape and form, or at least done it, specifically target Linux. But Linux is doing that against Windows and proprietary software. So they are in a war that nobody else is fighting. But they are. They are fighting it. They're calling it a war if you are pro-proprietary software and Windows. You are now part of the enemies. Where Windows like, hey, we don't care what you're using. You want Linux, we are giving you Linux under Windows subsystem for Linux. You want open source, we are open sourcing some programs for you. What the fuck is your problem? And they are still at war. They are trying to fight a war that don't exist. And that have never worked for any tech companies in the world. When did Apple start to become highly profitable? When they stopped fighting Windows. Up till Steve Jobs came back in the late 90s, they looked at macOS and Macintosh and Apple as, we have to win, Microsoft have to die. Steve Jobs came back, made a deal with Microsoft that saved Apple, and he said that the idea of Windows have to die and Mac have to win has to go away, or Apple have to win have to go away. We need to exist in the same space. That don't mean they can't be competitors. That don't mean that they can, fight over who has the best operating system or the best phone. But they stopped being like, Windows have to die for Apple to win. And ever since they did that, they skyrocketed. And we need to be the same. The Free Software Foundation needs to do the same. Linux needs to do the same. We need to say we have to stop saying that Windows is the enemy, Microsoft is the enemy, and they have to go away for us to succeed. We need to just be like, okay, they are part of the fucking landscape in IT. That it is what it is. We just have to focus on making Linux better, 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 and better. And we need to be able to play in a world where Apple and Windows is. People like him don't want that. I honestly believe, to him, the year of the Linux desktop is when Windows is not here anymore. And Mac OS. I am sure, or at least he want Windows and Mac OS to be 10% of the market and Linux 90%. He will not be happy with everything being equally split up. Because then we are still at war. We're not the majority. Microsoft is not fighting that war. They don't give a fuck. Honestly, Microsoft don't really give that big a fuck about Linux because they are set in stone. They are making more money than any Linux company could dream of. The same with Apple. They don't really give a fuck about Linux. It's not a threat to them. It really is. Yeah, Linux in some server market, Linux have a massive big, or not a massive, but they are like 50-50-ish with Windows. Yeah, in some server market. Not all. And being 50-50 with Microsoft, that still means that Microsoft, if you look at it as one company, Microsoft being one company, and each Linux distribution being its own company, then Microsoft is winning massively because they're sitting on 50% of the market, where Ubuntu may sit on 20%, Red Hat on the other 20%, and then the rest on the last 10%. Microsoft is sitting on 50%, but Ubuntu is only sitting on 20%, and they are fighting for users with Red Hat and let's just say the rest of the Linux world. So the last 50% are fighting each other while they're also fighting Microsoft. Where Microsoft is just like, hey, let you guys just duke it out between each other. We had 50% or 49% or 48%. Hey, no individual Linux company has more market share than Microsoft has as a company. And that's what people tend to forget when they are putting together the market share for Linux on the server market. They're saying, oh, Linux, yeah, but here's the thing. Red Hat and Canonical are Linux, but they're also competing with each other for users. So you can't just say, oh, Linux have 50%. No. What is the biggest company in the server market and how big is that percentage? And if you compare that to Microsoft, it's like they don't fucking care. Because they see the wars that Linux is fighting with each other. And a little bit like the left, we're eating each other up. Oh, we can't find someone to cancel today. Let's cancel someone within our own ranks. And that is what Linux is doing.
Make sure you're on the right side of that battle, especially later on when, the battle is over. And
this is how social justice warriors and cancellation culture is talking on Twitter. Remember to be on the right side of history. There should not be a right or wrong side on history when we are talking software and development and software philosophies, development philosophies. It should just be philosophies. It should just be approaches to do a workload. That's all it is. There is no right way to program a program. There is standards, of course, you get what I'm saying here, but open source is no more right than proprietary is wrong. It's up to the individual what they want to do. We should not... What he's saying here, again, he's judging proprietary software, and he wants everything to be open source, and he's predicting that everything will be open source, and we are now becoming part of the open source party, or cult, or whatever the fuck you would call it, and we will take over the world, and we will make the world a better place. And he is so sure that will happen.
You want to be on the right side of history. You want to be able to say, hey, you know what, I'm proud of my actions way back when, and many of you guys, I don't think in years to come will be proud of the way you've handled.
I don't care about people using proprietary software, and I don't look down or judge people using proprietary software. I'm sorry to say this, DT, but you need to fucking listen to what you are saying, my friend.
The whole free and open source software versus proprietary software. But right now, I'm going to go buy a 6-pack of beer because I'm going to celebrate NVIDIA and our successes for today. Again, I think this is just another sign.
I am so fucking oh my god, I kind of want to hug him right now. Like, it's actually making me sad now. I'm actually sitting here and being a little bit like, don't he have everything else in life? If this is his high point in life, that he needs to celebrate this, I'm actually concerned right now. I like getting a fucking 6-pack and celebrate that we got NVIDIA or some part of the NVIDIA drivers open sourced is the most sad thing I have ever fucking heard, man. Like, I hope this is a joke. Okay, I hope this is a joke. Because if there are people out there, that's the sad part here. This means nothing in the world. Nothing is going to happen with this, other than within us nerds and the programming world and the tech world. But it's not even that big deal in the tech world. But I have never felt the need to just get one beer because of something like this happening in the tech world. If this is the case, if Linux and open and free software and Richard Stallman is this big part of his life, we need to fucking go and grab him and get him, kick his ass into a fucking pub and show him some fucking girls and boys or whatever he's into. I don't know, aliens or probing machines or cows or whatever. Show him some good time. See you all later. Bye bye.